Thanks for joining us back here on the Spirit of Freedom podcast. We are your hosts, Ben and Abby Brinkerhoff, and we are so excited to discuss the Spirit of Freedom with you today.
Thanks for coming. We have Gabby here. Gabby is from Cuba. She's lived here in the United States for, did you say 6 years?
Yeah.
6 years?
6 years.
Okay. She has an awesome story about where she comes from, how she's gotten to where she is today, and what she's doing now to help people. So we'll just kind of let you run with it and start out by telling us just where you come from and share as much as you feel comfortable.
Okay. So I am from Cuba, as Ben was saying, and I lived in Cuba until I was 18 years old. Since I can remember, my family and I always tried to leave Cuba, always looking for ways to leave the country. But it was so hard to find a way because just with a Cuban passport, you were not free just to leave whatever you wanted to, right? So we had to become citizens of another country in order to leave Cuba. And that country was Spain. Turns out that I had ancestors from Spain, my great-grandparents. And once I got the Spanish passport, I was finally able to leave Cuba. I went to Spain with my family. And then from Spain, we came to the U.S., and got the benefit from a law that was here at the time for Cubans. It was called the dry feet, wet feet law. Basically, if you were Cuban and you were caught on dry land in the US, you could stay legally and get all the benefits and just, So we came with the Spanish passport on a plane super easily. Once we got here, dry feet, we said, we want to get the dry feet, wet feet law. They said, welcome to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we stayed legally. But it took a long time to leave Cuba.
So, is it pretty common for people in Cuba to want to leave?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody
wants to leave, yeah. Maybe all people don't want to leave because they're scared of what they can find outside of the country.
So why Spain? Was it because you had ancestors from Spain? What did you have to do to be able to get citizenship there and leave?
So we got the citizenship in Cuba without even being out of Cuba ever.
For Spain?
Yes, because my ancestors were from Spain. And Spain had a law that if you were family of someone who came from Spain to Cuba, you could get your Spanish citizenship. So I got the Spanish citizenship being in Cuba. Once I got the passport, I was able to leave Cuba.
Okay.
It's complicated, but...
No, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So how long were you in Spain for?
About a year and a half.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then you came straight to Miami, you said?
Mm-hmm.
And then how long did you live in the United States before you were able to get citizenship?
It took me 5-6 years.
Okay.
I became a U.S. citizen in 2022.
Okay.
So, yeah. I had to be a legal resident for 5 years.
Before
and then I could apply to the naturalization and then get the certificate. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. You mentioned that everybody wants to leave Cuba. What are some of the reasons why? What are some of the reasons why people aren't happy there? People aren't prospering, maybe like they are in other parts of the world. Just touch on that.
Socialist life, communist life. You live with a ration food card where you get 1 bread per person a day, small bread that turns green at the end of the day because it's made out of sweet potato. And then you get 5 eggs a month. You get just a little bit of oil for the whole month. You get milk until you're 7 years old. After you're 7 years old, you don't get more milk. Things like that. It's really hard to find food to get a good nutrition. Everything you do, it can be illegal in Cuba. Like my parents used to buy milk for us in the black market. Can you believe that?
Milk?
Yes, because it was our neighbor that had a bunch of kids under 7 years old. And she used to sell the milk because she needed the money. And that was illegal. So my mother bought it for us. And just anything like starting a business, everything is illegal. Everything is a problem. If you kill your cow, you could go to prison. You're not allowed to eat beef, not even if it's your own animal that you want to kill. Our friend from the countryside, he killed a cow, and he thought that nobody had seen him, but actually neighbors did. They called the police on him, and he went to prison.
So who's regulating this? Is it just the police and law enforcement, or
The government in general. All the branches of like police and National Guard, military, everything is controlled by the government. So they know how many cows you have, how many horses. If one dies, you have to report it. It's crazy.
so when you say like we get 5 eggs a
Mhm.
month, so a little bit of oil, do you go to like some government place to get that, or they like ration it out?
Yes.
So they don't have like grocery stores where you can just go.
No, right now they have grocery stores where you can buy if you have someone from the outside, like family member, that sends you dollars, US dollars, they put them in a card for you from here. And you go with that card to the special store and you can actually get other kinds of food. But of course, not everybody has a family outside the country and cannot afford that. Now, the time that I was living in Cuba, these stores did not exist. You literally had to leave with your ration card and the stuff that you could buy in the black market. Right now, at least you have another possibility, because the government is really tight in money and they need US dollars. So they are giving a chance for the families members who are outside the country to feed those who are still in prison in Cuba, in prison.
So this is just recently that they've
Yes, it's
started having.
recently. Still, it's not fair because not everybody can afford it.
Yeah, well, it's probably
So,
hard to get money, right?
mhm.
So what do people do? Does everybody just work for the government, pretty much?
Everything is owned by the government. Even if you open a restaurant, it's controlled by the government. So it's not really yours. Your house belongs to the government. Any property belongs to the government. Schools, hospitals, everything belongs to the government. There's no private property in Cuba.
Zero private property.
No private property. Our house, my parents built it, and it's not ours. We left Cuba, and if we didn't come back to Cuba within 2 years, I think, they would take away our house. So we had to put it under a family member name that is still in Cuba in order to keep the house. hmm So we have the food issue, we have the healthcare issue where you don't have medicine, like painkillers or anything you need to have a surgery done, you don't have that. People get tired of living under those conditions. You cannot have a dream of becoming a doctor and earning money. My cousins, right now, they were going to med school in Cuba, and they're about to leave their career because they're hungry. Because they're sent to school, they don't eat anything at school, and my uncle and my aunt don't have money to give them to buy something outside of the school, the food that they're offered. So they're gonna have to leave their careers, drop off, and stop achieving their dreams.
So touch on the healthcare a little bit more. So in Cuba, are all the doctors like government employees, and it's free healthcare, right? So, but like, I guess, what are some of the problems with that? Is it just the quality of the healthcare is not good? Is it that they don't have the resources? What are some of the challenges with that?
Yeah, it's basically they don't have resources. And lately, in these last years, we don't have good education for doctors either. They're not well taught. And then when they get to the position of being a doctor, they don't have the material. So if you want to get a surgery in Cuba, you literally have to bring everything that the doctor puts in the list for you.
So the doctor will give you a list of what you need.
Yeah, like gloves, syringes,
Oh, like all that
alcohol,
kind of stuff.
everything.
Wow.
Everything.
So we talked about healthcare a little bit. What's the education system like? Like what was it like for you to go to school and
So going to school in Cuba, it was pure indoctrination. It was saying things like, pioneers for communism, I will be like Che Guevara, marching, military training to protect ourselves from the US attack, which never happened. We had to repeat things like socialism or death, long live Fidel, and
They would teach you that kind of, like, make you chant stuff like that?
Yes, you have to say it. If you don't say it, you're anti-communist, you're behaving badly at school, you don't get good grades, you're not a good student, you know. You would have to attend marches. Like on May 1st is the International Day of Workers. So you would have to attend these marches in order to get a good grade, be a good student, you know. The classes that they teach you, the lessons, they're very, very biased, especially history. When I came out of Cuba, I was able to learn other parts of history that I was never taught in Cuba. Like what happened in La Bahía de Cochinos, Pig Bay, in Matanzas, when some Americans went over, tried to take over, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard about that.
Yeah.
But I learned, once I was here in America, I learned that many of those people were actually Cuban Americans that wanted to go and fight for their country. What they teach you in Cuba is that they were just Americans. They were Americans, and they were trying to take over Cuba and kill Cubans, and, you know. So they put in your heart this hate towards America, towards the people who leave the country since a very young age. You're just a kid and you're already learning about hating America.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so everyone's taught this. Do most people believe it? Like, do people buy into it?
Many people actually do. Especially at the time I lived in Cuba, nobody had internet. When I left Cuba, around 2016 more or less, people started having internet, some people. So some people started to see the reality outside of Cuba. Still, they don't get access to full information, but they're starting to wake up, you know? But when we told our family that we were leaving to Spain, they said, "What? Aren't you scared they're gonna kill you?" We said, "Who's gonna kill us? People in Spain." We said, "No, they're not gonna kill us. Why would they kill us?" Because in their mind, everything is so good in Cuba. Outside of Cuba is terror and crime, shootings, all is bad. Why would you want to leave Cuba?
So they kind of scare you into thinking the government has got you covered, and everybody else is evil, and they'll try and take advantage of you. And
the youngest generations, they all want to leave.
They do want to leave?
Yes, they want to leave. But the old generations, like my grandma's age, they're still blind.
Specifically talk about America?
They do.
Like, as America is like the most evil country?
Imperialism, they're all over the Middle East, South America, exploding people. Like how bad capitalism is, because it's literally on TV. They play cartoons of Donald Trump as a giant walking over little kids that are trying to cross the border. Can you believe that? So when kids look at these cartoons, they're like, "Oh, so Donald Trump is bad." And you know, no matter what your parents tell you at home, when you get to school and they teach you different things, you're confused.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know who to believe. Do I believe my parents or do I believe the school? You know, are Americans really bad or are they good? Because my parents worked in tourism, always in Cuba. My mom used to be a teacher, but she used to earn $1.75 a month. And she used to teach in a very, very poor town where kids would pass out from not eating and things like that. That they said in Cuba that doesn't happen. That only happens in the US under capitalism. No. It happens in Cuba, in socialism, because everybody's poor. So my mom had to leave her teaching job, and she started working in restaurants with tourists where she could get tips, you know, and get paid in US money. And my dad used to work at a hotel where he earned US dollars too. And with this connection with tourists, they were able to learn that there was a reality out there, you know, something different. And of course, my parents always taught me and my sister that we needed to leave Cuba, that we were not living right, that we were not free, we didn't have good conditions, you know, and everything was going to change when we left Cuba. So we always grew up thinking of this and having this dream of leaving Cuba. But then when you get to school, you have to act like you are with the revolution. You are with the government. You're communist, because if you don't, you're gonna get bad grades and you're not gonna be anybody in your life. And I remember watching Fidel Castro's speeches at school and documentaries about Che Guevara, and they play these songs that are so beautiful because somehow communists make such good songs to indoctrinate people that even nowadays sometimes I wake up singing these songs and I'm like, why am I singing this song? Please somebody help me. It's evil. They get stuck in your head. So I remember watching these videos at school with the music and everything, and I would want to cry. I got emotional looking at Fidel Castro screaming and saying, we want all the kids to be free, all the kids to have food. Of course, I was just a kid. I didn't understand. And then I got home and my parents said, no, Fidel Castro is a killer. He has killed black people, priests, homosexuals, people who think different. He's not a good person. And you just grew up being so confused. You know, what do I believe? Who has the truth? Maybe both sides have a truth. But of course, when you go out of Cuba and you learn other parts of history, you have access to other information, to internet, to books, you learn that there is actually one truth. And it is the truth that is on God's side. Anything that goes against God, it is not truth. It just wants to confuse you and makes you miserable. Makes you sad, miserable, doesn't let you succeed in life, takes away your free agency. That's communism.
So your parents, before they started working at the hotel and the restaurants, is that what kind of opened their eyes to America might not be such a bad place and there's some problems here? Or was it before that they were...
They realized a little bit before that, even before they met. When they met, something that brought them together, one of the things that brought them together was the fact that they both wanted to leave the country. They were very young, but my mom had a brother who died in a very bad conditions in Cuba because of the healthcare system. He had leukemia, and even he needed some antibiotics and some medicines, but the hospital was not providing them. So the doctor of my uncle talked to my grandma and said, look, you can go to this hospital in another city and tell them, hey, I need this medicine and they're gonna give it to you. So my grandma went there, and as soon as she got there, the nurse asked her, yeah, we're gonna give you the medicine, but tell me, who was the doctor that sent you here? And my grandma so naively gave her the name of the doctor, and the doctor was sent to prison, to trial, for creating panic in society. So while my uncle was suffering with the lack of medicines, lack of conditions in the hospital, just because the system doesn't work, they had the medicine, but they wouldn't give it to him. And it was like a chain of things that made my mom realize, I have to leave. You know, working as a teacher, earning $1.75 a month, $1.75. And then my dad on the other side, just seeing life. You cannot achieve anything, you cannot work honestly, it's just so bad. Of course, when they got into the tourist field to work, they started to learn even more about the outside.
Wow. That's crazy.
I want to hear more about your uncle on the raft.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
About an uncle? Yeah. Earlier when we were talking, you had mentioned a story about an uncle you have.
Yeah, I have an uncle that he tried coming to the US a few times in a raft, and he was actually intercepted. And while he was intercepted, Fidel Castro was actually telling people that they could leave freely. Anybody that was against the revolution could leave. But of course he was stuck because he had been intercepted and he was not allowed to leave. But then he finally made it. I think it was in the third try that he made it out.
So they would intercept him, and would they take him to prison?
Yeah, so they would take him and interrogate him, detain him, but then he finally made it out. So good for him, never giving up. Mhm.
And he made it just by going on a raft?
Yeah.
So he finally made it.
I don't know if the third time was a raft or a boat, but he made it on the sea. He didn't take a plane.
Can people from Cuba like leave to go on vacation to other places?
No.
You can't leave at all. Like you couldn't.
No.
It's not like you can just go hop on a plane and go to Europe or.
You cannot dream of that. Actually, I remember talking to my teenager friends at school in Cuba and thinking, oh, as soon as we leave this country, we can travel the world. We want to go to Egypt, we can go to Greece, we can go to Europe, and but the first goal was to leave Cuba, because while you're in there, you cannot do that. You cannot go on vacation. At the time I lived in Cuba, you were not even allowed to get into hotels where tourists were.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like speechless. You mentioned that the history is biased when they teach you history. So is that predominantly what the education is? Is Cuba's the chosen people, so to speak?
Yes.
Or the way we do it's the right way? They talk about like the history of how Cuba became communist or anything like that?
Yeah, they teach you all the history from when Columbus got to Cuba and colonized us, and then they go all the way up to the time where Fidel Castro wins power and brings a revolution, but they skip some parts of history that you actually learn when you leave Cuba. Like Cuba was actually free in 1902. It was finally a republic. We were free. We had elections. But then 1959, Fidel came into power, and
So there's no elections in Cuba?
no, there's only one party. It's the Communist Party.
And then they determine who takes over
Yes,
in power after.
within
themselves, with the
Yes.
elitist.
Yeah, so I remember they had elections in the neighborhoods. So you would elect your delegate. So like
Yeah.
caucus here,
Yeah.
similar. But what is that for? Like, you're not even going to elect the president, It's all a show. They want to show the world, yes, we have elections, but they really don't.
Because the Communist Party just runs everything.
It's just
and
the
there's
Communist
no
Party.
options.
No options.
So when you were 18, you moved to Spain. Did your family move with you?
Yes.
So
they
your
did.
whole family
So my parents, my sister, and my grandma.
all moved to Spain.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was great. When we got to Spain, the first thing we did was visit a supermarket. And I remember the doors open automatically. And I didn't know if I should walk in or, like, what do I do? And then I finally walked in, and I was shocked. There was so much food, colors, shapes. It was overwhelming, I remember seeing these huge cakes that have, those cakes that have like a picture on top,
Yeah.
or a cartoon or something.
Yeah.
I asked my dad, do they eat this? And, yeah, you eat that. Then we went to the cereal aisle and we picked a cereal. But there were so many. I got dizzy. I didn't know what to pick, what to look at. It was too much information.
Wow. So when you were in Spain, were you religious at all before you moved to Spain?
I was baptized in the Catholic Church because my grandma was really faithful. But I didn't really practice the religion. However, I had a lot of faith in God. I always believed in God. Thanks to my grandma. Because she taught me to pray to God, to talk to Him every night. To believe that He was always with me, that He was always watching over me. So I always wanted to behave for God, be a good person so that God would be proud of me, do good things. Many times I had a lot of temptations, especially at school. There were kids with pornography, kids with cigarettes, almost putting them in my mouth. All my friends had tons of boyfriends. I never had a boyfriend because I knew if I had a boyfriend in Cuba, I had to have sex with these boyfriends. And I didn't want to have sex before marriage. In my mind, I did not want to have sex before marriage, ever. And I don't know why I thought about that, because my parents never really gave me rules or anything. Yeah, you can have boyfriends when you're older, but they never gave me a rule about not having sex before marriage, not doing this, not doing that. I just knew what I thought was right and what I thought it was wrong, and I just did what I thought was best for me, always believing that God was watching over me. And when I went to Spain, I think we had been in Spain for like a month, and we saw the missionaries. My mom met the missionaries actually first. They were the senior missionaries, so they were older.
Mm-hmm.
And they started talking to my mom about the religion, the church, and my mom said, "Sorry, I don't want to hear about this."
She said
Yeah,
said no.
I have heard too many people from different churches. I don't want to hear you guys. I'm sorry, but in a nice way. And then they say, "Well, you can bring your girls to English lessons at the chapel for free. And your oldest girl can play the piano," because I also play the piano. My mom said, "Okay, I will send the girls, just don't speak to them about the church." So my sister and I started going to English lessons, and after 2-3 months, I was so curious about it that I finally asked the missionaries, "Hey, what is the church about? Can you tell me?" And as soon as they told me, I said, "This is where I belong. This is exactly where I belong. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't have sex before marriage. I believe in God. This is my place." And I just got baptized because it was literally made for me, And I understand other people have other kinds of beliefs, and that's fine. There are so many churches. But I am just so grateful that I found the church where I belong. It was just the best. And right at the right time. I had just been in Spain for 1 month. It really helped me get acclimated, to the culture and to start going to church on Sundays. When they told me you have to come to church every Sunday, I said, "What? I like sleeping until 11 noon on Sundays." And they said, "Just come to church on Sundays and you will like it, you'll see." So I started going. The first Sunday I went, I never wanted to stop going. I wanted to go every Sunday. I loved it, It was just the right place for me. It was awesome. Mm-hmm.
So in Cuba, do they teach you to not believe in God, like at school and stuff, or do they not talk about that?
Well, in school they don't talk about religion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, but your grandma had taught you,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you got to Spain, you met the missionaries.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. So you lived in Spain for 1.5 years. How did you go from Spain to the U.S. and it was Miami, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we actually had to do a quick stop in Cuba because of the dry feet, wet feet law in the U.S. Many Cubans were actually doing that. They were becoming Spanish citizens, going to Spain, and then coming straight to Miami, so they knew we were going to stay. So the people in the airport in Spain were not letting Cubans who were Spanish also to travel straight to the U.S. So what we did, we had to buy a ticket to Cuba, like we were visiting Cuba, and then from Cuba back to Madrid, Spain. And then we actually bought a ticket from Cuba to Miami and from Miami to Cuba, so that the people in Cuba wouldn't think that we were staying in Miami. So we had to go from Madrid to Cuba, and then from Cuba to Miami, and then we stayed. Never went back.
And you haven't been back since?
I actually been back, yeah. When my grandma was about to come to the U.S., I went there and I brought my husband, an American, because that was literally the only and last chance he had to see Cuba. After my grandma came here, like, we have no reason why to go to Cuba, But I really wanted him to see. So we went to Cuba, we picked up some books, like old books, and pictures for my grandma that she couldn't bring herself. Mm-hmm. And we brought all.
So you went, you had to do the runaround thing where you went to, from Spain to Cuba to Miami, right?
Yeah.
And then you never went back. And how long did you live in Miami for?
In Miami for 2 years.
For 2 years.
And then I went to Idaho for a school, BYU, Idaho.
Okay. And then you said that's where you met your husband, right?
That's where I met my husband.
Okay. And he's from Tennessee?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you guys got married, ended up here down in Utah County, Orem. And he's in medical school and living the American dream.
Living the American
dream. Yeah, having a baby in April.
But it's awesome, like, This is it's more than I ever dream of. More than I could ever imagine. I'm so grateful every day. Sometimes I'm eating something and I tell my husband, "Can you believe I'm eating this?"
And he's probably like, "What are you talking about?"
Like the other day I wanted to eat a bagel with cream cheese and strawberries on top, and I said, "None of these things are in Cuba. Can you believe I'm eating this right now?" And sometimes it just comes up to my mind. Like I realize that I'm not dreaming, that this is reality, you know? Or like I'm driving in the car and I have the AC and everything. All the streets look so clean, and then I have a flashback to the nightmare where everything was so dirty and nasty and smells so bad, and the heat, and it's terrible. It's just awful, and it shocks me, you know, that I'm here, that I'm living this amazing life, doing everything I like. I went to school. I never thought I could go to college in America in a second language, and I did it. And I don't know how I did it, but I did. and I don't know, getting married to an American that many people tell you, no, Americans are racist. No, Americans are good people. There is good and bad people everywhere.
Yeah.
Americans are not racist. There are racist people, but no, you cannot say Americans are racist. And I married my husband, which is like the best man ever that I have ever met. Like my dream man, my husband. And now I'm having a kid. I open a little business. I work from home. I wake up at any time I want. It's just such a nice life. It's just the best.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Appreciate the small things,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that's awesome that you have that perspective on how grateful, you know, we all should be to live in America, live in a free country where you can go to school, you can start whatever career you want, you can start a business if you want, you can read whatever books you want. I mean, that's things you take for granted, right? So you started the business.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So when I graduated, I actually did a bachelor's in international relations, and my goal was to go straight to law school. But first I wanted to get a little experience, so we looked for jobs in Houston, where we were living at the time, and I got a real good job at a law firm. I gained a lot of experience in that law firm, but I didn't enjoy my job as much because it was such a huge law firm, prestigious and everything, but at the same time, we were having cases that I personally did not feel comfortable helping with and collaborating. Like there were weird things going on, people that in my moral and my values, they're not good people that don't deserve to be in the US. Of course, there is the law, and if an attorney has the knowledge and experience, they can get through the law and get things done lawfully and legally. But again, I don't feel comfortable doing certain things, so I left that job, and I found a way to open my own immigration business where I can choose who I want to help and feel comfortable and sleep nicely at night without worrying about, did I make the wrong choice or something, right?
Yeah. You get to choose, right?
Exactly.
So you help people who are immigrating from other countries, and you help them with paperwork and just knowing what to do,
work permits, TPS, like temporary protected status, asylums, like simple applications of asylums that they can finish up with an attorney later. Just that kind of stuff. But there are so many bad people coming through the border right now, and I can tell you this because I've been working in immigration for years. And when I worked with the attorneys, I saw it. When I work by myself, I see it now. That
people come to you and want to come into the country, and you feel like they have bad intentions.
Yes.
Okay. So what do you think the solution for that is? Is it just...
We definitely need to close the border in the way that we have a filter. You can't just let anybody come through. I have people who come and they don't have an ID, and they don't have an identification, they don't have a record of their life before, you know. How is the border the immigration at the border and the officers at the border, letting all these people through without knowing who they are, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah.
I'm sure there's enough to stay busy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's cool you get to keep.
Yeah.
You get to pick and choose who you want to work with, right?
Yeah.
But at the law firm in Houston, you felt like they were just trying to help everybody through, so they can make more money.
Yeah.
And if that didn't sit right with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And attorneys are just so smart, you know. They go to law school for
Yeah.
that. They can understand all the law and find a way to help the person. But sometimes you have to stick to your values, you know. I personally believe that if you lose your values, what do you have left? Nothing. That's who you are, your values. You have to protect your values at all costs, because once you lose them, you're not yourself anymore. You cannot even believe in yourself anymore, you know?
Yeah.
So for me, that was really important. And I feel really happy and released now that I can work for myself and I can choose who I want to help. If I see something that I'm like, I don't have the tools to check if this is really a good person, you know, I say, I'm sorry, you have to go with an attorney. I cannot help you.
Do you eventually want to go to law school?
Yes, I do want to go to law school. I want to learn all the tricks. But
so you can help more people, right?
Yes, but use them in the right way.
Yeah, because there's people who, a lot of good people who, you know, need help.
Mm-hmm.
But
definitely. There's so many good people coming through also. People who are working, paying their taxes. I myself am an immigrant. And I believe I've been a good immigrant because I've been working and providing to the country, you know, contributing to the country. And just like me, there are other good immigrants too that don't deserve to be judged by all these bad people coming through.
So, like, what would you say to people like us who have lived in America our whole lives? What are the things that you think we don't appreciate like we should?
I don't know. It's just that for me, I have this previous experience in Cuba, so even the little things I appreciate. But something really big in America that everybody should appreciate is their freedoms for everything. To own a house, to own a business, to travel, even travel within the country. In Cuba, you cannot even, if you move from the countryside to Cuba, to Havana, the capital, you are illegal. Illegal in your own country. Sometimes kids cannot even attend school in Havana because they are illegal in Havana. Or get a ration card in Havana because they don't belong to Havana. They belong to the countryside. They need to stay there. So I never had the chance to travel through my country to get to know all these beautiful places that tourists know in Cuba. And Americans can travel all over the U.S. and get to know all these amazing places, historical places, natural places. It's just, you just appreciate everything you have. You know, going to the supermarket, buying anything you want to eat. And there is a price for every budget, literally. If you go to Walmart, you can see a price for poor, a price for middle, a price for more rich, you know?
Yeah.
But you have the option. You can pick whatever you want. Sometimes I feel like, I want to eat salmon today. So we go to the store and we get a salmon. Salmon?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. And and I have it, you know, and it's a little pricey, but I want to have it.
Yeah, but if you want it,
And I can afford it.
If you're working hard and you made money,
So that's life. That's what I want. Why do I want more, you know? Now, of course, we have dreams that we're always trying to achieve, but just live the moment and appreciate what you have right now, you know? We already have everything. We're talking here whatever we want. We don't care. The police is not going to come and take us for speaking this, right? And we can go to the store, buy whatever we want. We can drive our cars. If we need a doctor's appointment, we go. And insurance is expensive, but there's, again, for different budgets. And people who don't make much money get a welfare and get help somehow. And you get good attention at the hospital. Not like in Cuba, that it was free health care, but you didn't get the health care you needed.
Because, you don't get the attention.
It doesn't exist. No attention, no materials to work with. It's just awful. But here, we live a good life.
Yes, we do.
Mm-hmm.
People live in Cuba.
When I left, they said about 11 million, but so many people have left. I don't know how many people.
It's probably a lot less now.
Yeah.
with your experience with living in Cuba, living in different parts of the world and different parts of the country, what do you think about what's going on in Utah right now?
There is a lot of Marxism in Utah right now, and people don't realize it because they cannot recognize it. They have never studied properly, so they cannot recognize the patterns. But me, coming from Cuba, I can see communism and Marxism everywhere here in Utah. For example, there are books in school where they have pictures of Che Guevara. They're teaching kids about Che Guevara, about revolutions in Cuba, and all the good side of the history of Cuba, about how good communism is, socialism is. Then they have these clubs at the universities, especially U of U, University of Utah.
Yeah.
And the clubs have other names, but when you look them up, they are related and linked straight to the Socialist Party in Utah. Many people don't know that we have a Socialist Party in Utah. But they even have a conference center, and they send young Americans every year to Cuba in brigades, where they learn about socialism and then they teach about it here in Utah. And they call it eyewitnesses statements or eyewitnesses experience, when they literally went to Cuba just for a few days as tourists and got brainwashed by the dictatorship.
Because they go to the tourist places and they think, oh, this is great. Why don't we just do that in America?
Yeah, they're taken to schools. They show them how happy kids are at school. I remember when I was in the music school in Cuba, we had people come from Canada, from Australia, and from other countries. Young people from college, from high schools, to see how we lived and how was our school. Every time we have one of these visits, they told us you have to wear your best uniforms, your best shoes, you have to act like properly. And it was so sad. Every time these foreigners, students, they brought little souvenirs from their countries for the kids in the schools, and they would literally go like this and have the Cuban kids jump at it. And I would never forget this image from my mind of all these kids trying to get whatever the foreigner students were trying to get them. But of course, they get a good image about how happy kids are in Cuba in the school, how they go to school, they're all wearing the same uniform, no matter if they're rich or poor. Of course, everybody's poor. But anyways, going back to the topic, the Socialist Party in Salt Lake is sending young people to Cuba to get brainwashed and then come back here and teach about it. We have the Communist Party, a branch, in Provo, Utah, where they also teach and share propaganda, communist propaganda and Marxist propaganda. You have the book clubs in universities teaching the Communist Manifesto by Marx.
By Karl Marx.
And you have critical race theory, you have Black Lives Matter, you have gender ideology. These are all things that come from Marxism. Because Marxism teaches that there is a class that is being oppressed by another powerful class, like a higher class. And they want to put this idea in kids here at school that they're poor, that they are less advantaged because of the color of their skin or because of their gender, and that is not true. Here in America, anybody like me, I'm a simple example, I'm nobody, but I was able to attend college, being Cuban, being a woman, being Latina, not speaking English perfectly. I went to college and I graduated with no special treatment. I almost failed a few classes, but I made it. So if I made it, how come American-born people are saying they're being oppressed just because their sexual preference, their skin color, their ethnicity is really not true? They're being lied to.
And there's a book club where they learn about communism and socialism?
Yes. But people here, they don't see the patterns. They don't, it's just college kids. They're just, it's okay. We cannot ban books. Yeah, we cannot ban books. Everybody should read the Communist Manifesto and read about Karl Marx. But what is wrong is that we're letting these kids get brainwashed. That is wrong, It's very wrong because they are growing up believing that they're being oppressed, that there's people in America being oppressed, when it's actually not true.
Hey guys, so as we were recording our interview with Gabby, our 2-year-old son was waking up from a nap and started crying, and it interfered with the sound and messed some things up. So we're looking forward to having more conversations with Gabby, but we'll have those down the road. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.